criminal justice reform, and I must tell you, I've been a little bit of a student over the last 4 or 5 weeks too, because I started off a little bit on the negative side and said, what does it all mean? And then I speak to people that are really involved. I started looking at it very closely. And when you have somebody put in jail for 54 years because he did something and there's no chance of him coming out, and totally nonviolent, but there was a violation of a rule, that's tough stuff. Alice Johnson, I let her out. She was in jail for 22 years. She had another 28 years. And the crime was not worthy of a 50-year term in prison. And she came out, I'll never forget the look on her face. She walked out of jail after 22 years, and she was with her family. And they greeted her at the door, and everyone, she had grandsons, big, strong, beautiful guys. They grabbed their grandmother, and they were all crying. Everybody was crying. I said, what a beautiful thing that is. Everybody, big family, everybody, they would gather around in this large circle, hugging and kissing each other. She was in for 22 years. She had another 28 years to go.
I'm feeling no handcuffs, nothing on me. I'm free to hug my family. I'm free to live life. I'm free to start over. I cannot. This is the greatest day of my life. I cannot. My heart is just bursting with gratitude for what has taken place. And when they all came on, then I heard Kim Kardashian's voice. And she was the one who told me that that it had happened, that I was free, that I was going to rejoin my family.
Oh my God.
And she doesn't say she didn't know she made a mistake. But she was in there for 22 years when we let her out, and she had practically another 20 left.
She did.
And that's not appropriate.
Her children grew up, her grandbaby.
Yeah, no, so incredible.
Wow.
And you couldn't produce, there's nobody in Hollywood that could have produced that last scene of her. That was the real deal. Of her when she saw her kids. Yeah?
Amen.
Her family.
Amazing, amazing.
So it's really a fantastic. There's another case where a judge came to me, good man, and he was mandated to put a young man in jail for 28 approximately years. And he wanted him to go to jail for 2 years. He said he did commit a problem, but he was mandated to put him in jail for 28 years. And he actually left the bench. He quit. He was a highly respected judge and is a respected person. He was so saddened that there was nothing he could do because this young man was mandated to spend almost a good portion of the rest of his life, about 28 years, in jail. And the judge had no power to do anything about it, yet he was a judge. He said, when I can't give this man 2 years or 5 years, when he has to be in jail for the best part of his life, then I don't want to be a judge anymore. I never forgot it. This was 2 months ago that I met this gentleman, the judge.
Those of us that voted for these tough mandatory minimums 30 years ago realize that there's some unfairness in it, and I think this legislation will bring fairness to the system of sentencing.
Direction. There are a lot of people here who've worked incredibly hard. I'll say your son-in-law, Jared, poured his heart. Senate, Chuck Grassley, Mike Lee. Mike bled for this bill. Sure did. And on the Democratic side in the Senate, Dick Durbin worked very hard for this bill, and he was willing to reach compromise, which had he dug in, we wouldn't be here today. But because
and a man came up to me who's a top lawyer in this country, very, very knowledgeable as to this subject. He said, "Sir, this is the single biggest thing you've done, far bigger than tax cuts, far bigger than anything you've done." And I started to argue with him, and then after a while I said, "Why am I arguing?" I said, "Let's take it. What difference is it?" We'll take it.
this bill, I think, draws an important line where it grants relief to nonviolent offenders, people who haven't committed crimes of violence, but at the same time, it keeps violent criminals in prison. It keeps murderers and rapists in prison, and it focuses our law enforcement where we want to be focused, which is on the really bad guys, on the people who are committing crimes of violence. That's where law enforcement should be focused. Right now, there are far too many young men, particularly tragically young black men, who find themselves decades in prison for a nonviolent crime. This bill corrects this, and it's a great step in the direction of justice.
Thank you, Ted, very much. That's very much.
The reason this has not been addressed is because you don't win political points by doing this, but it's the right thing to do. Whether they were intended to be or not, had been relegated to second and third class citizenship in America, and they're a legion. And we have now given them the opportunity and their families and communities to believe that there is hope, that there is the possibility of freedom, and that justice will be served. And it wouldn't have happened without you, and I'm grateful. Thank you.
Faith-based groups in our state penitentiaries have had tremendous success in reaching out of all faiths, of all backgrounds, trying to be able to engage in working with recidivism, but they've been blocked from our federal penitentiaries. So this gives the options for those faith-based groups that have done so much in our state penitentiaries to now work with our federal penitentiaries and to be able to help these folks. And we have 40,000 people a year that are coming out of federal penitentiaries. We should do whatever we can to be able to help those folks re-engage in our community and with their families and with their faith. And this bill allows us to be able to do that. So I'm very grateful for the engagement.
Thank you, John. Thanks very much. Great job. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Mr. President, Topeka Sam is here. She is one of the great formerly incarcerated leaders. She's here. Jessica Jackson. I just want to make sure she gets at least a chance to shake your hand.
Oh,
give her a round of
she's
applause.
going to get a chance to speak. I'll give you a second. Did you give up your place, Bob? Good, right? Okay, we're going to have somebody that's really good, right? But you're going to get right back to Topeka, please.
Yes, well, thank you first, Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, Jared and Vodka, for this moment. It's very emotional for me. I want to give all glory to God, because God is why we are standing here together right now. When I was in federal prison for 3 years, there was no hope. There was no program. There was nothing for anyone. There's sisters like Pamela Wynn who lost her baby because she was shackled during child labor. And now this will all end. And my sisters and brothers who are presently incarcerated and watching, because they have called me all morning.
Yes.
We have been fighting and we will continue to fight, and this is just a first step. We are looking forward to continuing to work with you, President, and to make sure that our people will have everything that they need when they come home, so that we can all have an opportunity to transform our lives. So I thank you. I thank every single person in this room. And the reason why this happened was because, Jared, you experienced incarceration through your father. And you fought like you were in there, just like we were. And I thank you. Thank you all.
And I want to get to the other two too, Van, because you were so good, I want to hear the other two. Mike Lee, please.
Mr. President, thank you so much. It's almost hard for me to speak about this without being emotional. In the process of this has brought together friendships that I'll cherish for the rest of my life. I'm now texting buddies with Van Jones, with Dick Durbin, and with Cory Booker, and I speak to Jared Kushner about 5 times a day. It extends across Democrats, Republicans, liberals, conservatives, from one end of this country to another.
And when we talked about this in the House Senate, they said, when we talked about this, they said this will never happen. To all of you out there who don't believe in miracles, it does happen. So, Mr. President, as you look at that bill today, many times you sign those bills and you see lines on a page. And you've already heard from some discussion today, but I make it differently. Behind those lines are faces. There are faces behind those lines today that are now looking up again. They're seeing hope again. They're seeing lives turned around again. And they can look to this White House, and Jared, we've had many conversations about this. We knew we'd get here. The group that surrounded you, Mr. President, support this. They support what you have done and are so appreciative for the fact that you opened yourself up to say, here's something that can help people, and in this time of the year, this makes it all the while. The faces behind that bill will forever be grateful, and that's why we're here today. Thank you.
You kept and never getting down, I think, and the ability to bring people together. There's not very many times that we're all like this from different walks of the aisle, but we're all excited because of the spirit of what this does, and I would yield you.
Good. I like that. Jared has worked so hard on this. I said, you know, what's it all about? Many of us, when we just started, it's like, what's going on here? And he would be working so hard for really a long period of time, longer than anybody would even understand. And I would like to have you say a few words.
Thank you very much. And I think that the way that good legislation should be made in Washington is when everyone's at the table, everyone's arguing, everyone's fighting, but we did it respectfully, and we did it in a way that some of you are brought here from pain of the past, and that's very real, and it's made, I think, a lot of that pain worth it. But a lot of you have nothing to gain from this personally. And the fact that every time we needed somebody, they'd jump on a plane, they'd call. This is one of the issues that really has a constituency that doesn't have a lobbyist, it doesn't have a lobby group. And we were their lobbyists, and we fought for these people, and together we were able to make something happen. So I really want to thank everybody here because it really was a team effort. And so if we're not helping these people re-enter society, then what do we expect them to do? And they're going to commit more crimes, and that's going to make our community safer. And then you kept asking questions, you kept pushing me, you kept asking a lot of people's opinions, and you kept saying, is this tough? Is this something that's going to keep our community safer? Because we have to be strong. Are we working with law enforcement? And are we doing it right? And it really was your leadership that pushed us to make this bill better. And I just want to personally say it's been a real honor for me to work with each and every one of you.
Because whenever Jared had any difficulty with me on a couple of points, he'd send in a real power named Ivanka. And she would call me and she would say, Daddy, you don't understand. You must do this. You must. And I said,